Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Working While Homeschooling podcast, the podcast for workingwhilehomeschooling.com, where our mission is to help homeschooling parents make money, maybe even have a career, while continuing to homeschool and without losing their sanity. My name is Julie, and I am your host and resident career coach today. I want to thank you all for joining us and listening in. I hope you're doing well. Today's episode, we're going to discuss the real homeschool socialization question. We're going to get into that. It's going to be fun. But before we do, I want to make a brief announcement. I am ready to open up the Career Coach mailbag and answer your questions here on the podcast. So I would love for you to email me, and you can email me at julie@workingwhilehomeschooling.com. Let me know what your questions are, and hopefully you'll hear your answers on an upcoming podcast episode. If you could please put the subject line in there, Career Coach Mailbag, so I know exactly what it's for. And I'm happy to answer questions of a homeschooling, a working job search, or of a working while homeschooling nature. So please make sure you jump in, and hopefully your questions will be answered on an upcoming podcast. So let's talk about our topic this week, which is what I'm calling the real homeschool socialization question. And this is not about your kids, okay? So first off, I went and Googled it. This is about homeschooling us, the homeschool moms, the socializing for us, the homeschool moms. And I went and Googled that. To be honest, I could get very few articles to show up, even that talked about socialization of the homeschool mom. Because when you stick that in there, I promise you, it's all about homeschool moms talking about socializing their kids, or whether socialization is good or bad or whatever. And I'm not getting into that topic today because, we all know socialization is important. We all know social skills are very important. How we choose to do that is going to vary. And we also know, as working homeschool parents, socialization of our children is more difficult, and we have to be much more, I would say, conscientious of making sure it's done. So we'll talk socialization of your kids maybe some other time, but today it's about the socialization of the homeschool mom. Now, let me explain why I'm bringing this up. It's because, of course, I just moved 3 months ago, and we've tried all the quote-unquote easy things. We've gone to the park days with the homeschool group, and I've met homeschool moms that way. I've met some lovely moms that way. We've been visiting lots of churches. We haven't really settled on one because none of us can agree. We have, my kids have joined all their activities, and I've sat outside with the other parents, and, all the kind of quote-unquote easy things we do to socialize ourselves and get to know people. I've gone to our local community and, hang out with other Americans, all those kind of things. And frankly, I'm in a culture right now. I wouldn't say they're not accepting or they're not open to outsiders, because that's really not the case. They're the most polite, kind people. However, that concept of inclusivity and welcoming everyone in and just wide open doors is just really not a concept that they get. That is a real American thing. And maybe that's because of our history of, frankly, this being a country of immigrants and everybody coming here from a lot of different places. It's very much an American culture thing. So if you didn't know that, there you go. It's really different. I will tell you, frankly, I've been quite lonely. It's been hard for me to kind of break in, even in our little American crowd here, because everybody's busy and everybody kind of finds their little circle or their little clique, and you get into that clique and you don't really socialize outside your little circle. So for me, as a homeschool mom, as a working mom, not quite plugged into a church yet mom, my circles are kind of random. And so therefore, I don't really fit in the traditional mold. And I'll tell you, this has happened to me over and over and over. Every place we've moved, and we move every 2 to 3 years. So I've dealt with this a lot. Where do I find my spot, and where kind of do I find my tribe and such? This has really never been a very easy thing for me. And so for those of you that might be feeling that way in the working homeschooling crowd of you guys, I want to tell you, first of all, you're not alone. This is absolutely normal because, and I know when I first became a working homeschooler, I really felt like I didn't fit into the working, professional parent world, and I absolutely didn't fit into the homeschool world. I straddled the fence into both, and oftentimes I will tell you, I absolutely did not bring up homeschooling in my professional world, and I only wore my professional mask, my professional face, and I never talked about my family life. And then it was a very thick, sharp divide. So I had I had my work friends, and then I had some homeschool friends, even though most homeschoolers looked at me like I had horns coming out of my head. So that's normal. Okay, so if you're feeling that way, it's normal. And I do find a lot of homeschooling working parents will tell me, it's hard for me to get out. It's hard for me to meet people. Events are not convenient. And so we do end up, as our working homeschooling moms, being a little bit sheltered, being a little bit alone and closed off from a time constraint perspective, if nothing else. So it is harder, I think, honestly, for us to socialize as working homeschool moms. But I think it's almost more important for us to socialize as working homeschool moms than maybe someone else. Not to put anyone else down, but to really raise up the importance of how much I think it's important for us as working homeschool moms to socialize and get out there. It is, why might we not be doing that? Well, I'll tell you my own excuses that I've told myself is the limited time I have off, I need to spend with my family. They need more of me. Or frankly, I just don't have any time off. I will tell you in the past couple years that I had a friend tell me, why? She's like, why are you avoiding me? Why are you ignoring me? And this is a gal I've known for a long time. And I'm like, look, I work this many hours a week. I homeschool this many hours a week. I am now a special needs parent, the classification of special needs parents with diagnoses, and I spend this much time a week taking my kids to therapy appointments and driving to and from. And at some point, I'm still supposed to shower, buy groceries, feed my family, and clean a toilet. Oh, and maybe sleep. So frankly, I don't have friends right now, and I don't have a life right now, and that's just how it is. And I just flat out, she kind of caught me in an odd moment, and I just flat out said it out. And it was maybe a little bit abrupt, maybe a little bit, I could have maybe couched that in nicer terms, but she just caught me in a moment. And I was very kind of just laying it all out there for her. And she just went, oh, okay. And honestly, this is a working parent that's not a homeschooler, even though I've known her for a bazillion years, but everything she wanted to do also cost a lot of money. She wanted to go out to dinner, and so she would organize a group of girlfriends to go out for dinner, and they were never cheap restaurants, and I frankly couldn't afford it either. So that was another reason that I didn't get out, because everything seemed too expensive, and I didn't have it in my budget. Definitely didn't have it in my time budget. I think it's really easy just to say that, or say, well, whatever time I have left, I really should be spending with my spouse. I should be spending with my family. We should be having quality time, blah, blah, blah. It's really easy. And not one of those is untrue. Okay. So we're not lying to ourselves. This is not me telling you that you're lying to yourself, that you really have time when you don't, because we don't have time. I'll fully admit that. However, I think we have to make some time. Why should we do this? Okay, I'm going to throw some articles up in the show notes, but really, these articles are all about literally the medical reasons why we should be socializing. Getting out and being amongst people is very, very important. Okay, first of all, we humans, we are created as communal creatures. We are not creatures that are meant to be living alone. We're not meant, and we're not built to live in solitary. Okay. So when we are living in solitary, we do have physical, emotional, more, just mental needs that are not being met, whether you like to hear that or not. And for my highly introverted folks, and I know you're out there, and yes, I do lean toward introverted. I know you don't want to hear that because, frankly, I know a lot of highly, highly introverted people that think they could live just fine without another soul. But you could be living better. So, for example, let me show you some of these articles, read some stuff in these articles. Basically, there is neural activity that's specifically related to social interaction and how our brain benefits from that, and how the social context actually might determine our helpful habits. So if you're more active and you're more interacting with people in a healthy lifestyle, you're less likely to have diabetes, if you knew that. Isn't that crazy? So if you hang around people who love to exercise and eat healthy, and even if you're not, running the marathons yourself, you are probably going to be, you have I think a 60%. People who don't do that have a 60% more chance of developing diabetes. Isn't that crazy? So here's another article here. So the effects of isolation, yes, that's the right word, on physical health. So some of the health effects of isolation and loneliness include higher levels of stress hormones and inflammation, heart disease, heightened risk of developing a disability, and increased vulnerability to chronic illnesses such as type 2 diabetes. And again, this is a second article talking about this. Socialization may even increase one's risk of premature death. 2015 studies found socialization increased a person's risk of death by 30%. This is not me talking, guys. This is like medical studies after medical studies. So for no other reason alone, for your medical, your health, your physical and mental health, you need to get out and be around other humans. So that's one reason. Just as an aside, I would say also another reason to do this is we have to model the behavior we want our kids to emulate. I honestly don't want to look, 20, 30 years from now and have my kids feel like, playing the martyr complex. I don't know how to say that better, but I don't want them feeling like if they're trying to be a mom, they'd have to give everything else up. And the reason they feel that way and they think that way is because they watched their mom do it. So one of the things I always think about is, what is the kind of life I want my girls to have? What are the kind of habits I want them to have as a grown-up? And frankly, I try to live the way I want them to live moving forward. Not in a way that I'm trying to run their life, but again, we learn by what we see. Okay, if you think back to your parents and all the maybe good or bad things we learned through osmosis, just living with our family and our parents, you get that. So I'm trying to live by the things that I'm trying to teach my own kids and the things I hope they take away from me. So what are they learning just by watching you? Are they learning about you? Are they seeing that you take care of yourself and that you're always continuing to grow and learn and you're always trying to better yourself or whatever it might be? And, guys, I do live with chronic illness. I do have, I deal with stress a lot. And I need to model decent, healthy ways of them dealing with stress because I have 2 kids that have anxiety. So it's even more important to me. I think also as working while homeschooling parents, we are in extra high danger. Okay, we're in double danger of burnout, emotional, mental, physical burnout. And let's face it, we working homeschool parents, we ain't got time for that. We just don't. So we have to take care of ourselves because I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to be flat out in the bed because my stress levels have burnt through, cortisol levels are too high. My stress levels have burnt up my immune system and I'm flat out in the bed. I just don't. So I have to take care of myself, and that's that, really. We're not just homeschooling parents. We're not just working parents. We're doing both, and so we've got a double dose of danger there, and that's really how I think of it. I almost have to do double the amount of personal health and self-care. Okay, so we've talked about why I think we should. Okay, now let's talk about how you might do this. So you guys know I just moved here about 3 months ago, it's not even like just across town where I can use my old network. I'm starting from scratch, a bazillion miles away from where I was 4 months ago. And so yes, there's social media, and I'll be honest, I'm a social media freak, and that does allow me to build some tenuous connections and keep tenuous connections with old family and friends and people that I've known for years. And so that does help. For me, it does. I don't know what the medical studies will say, but for me, it does help some. As an introvert, it actually helps, I think, a little bit more because I can socialize on my terms and in individual doses, which is great. However, getting out of my house is important because I think I go numb. I go numb if I don't mentally. So if you're like me and you're like, well, yeah, Julie, I hear you. I'd love to get out of this house, but like, how would I do that? Or I've tried and I've given up because, well, this didn't work and this didn't work. This didn't work, so I've just given up. So if that's you, because that has been me, we do have to make an extra effort. It is more difficult for us to socialize, okay? And it might not be the traditional way that a homeschool parent might socialize. It might not be the traditional way that a working parent might socialize. We have to create our own niches and our own tribes and our own circle. Another article that kind of gave me the idea for today's podcast, it talks about the concept of being the horseshoe and not a circle. So we all talk about people who live in our circle. And this article is specifically like, no, we don't want a closed off circle. We want the horseshoe, okay, the openness. So a new person is always, always welcome. And I'll tell you, as a constantly new person, that's really, really important. Okay, how can we do that? How can we find our little horseshoes? Well, first of all, I want you to think of the things that spark joy. Okay, again, we're not cleaning out our house right now, but I want you to think about the things that you're going to bring into your life, not the things that you're throwing out of your life, the things you're bringing into your life to bring joy into your life and to spark joy. Okay, the things that literally you leave super pumped up. And I don't really care what that is. It should, like, you just walk out the door going, I wish I didn't have to go. When we, like, if, you take your kid to daycare or preschool, or they go to a party and then they throw a fit because now you have to tell them they have to leave. That's what a little bit I'm thinking about. Like, what's the mental thing that you might want to have a little temper tantrum about when you have to leave because you're having such a good time you don't want it to end? That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. That's what brings you joy. So I want you to think about the things that pump you up and bring joy. Okay, and that's it. Make a list. Again, this list does not have to be realistic. I would absolutely love to live on the beach and live literally on the beach and be on my little lawn chair every day, all day. That brings me a heck of a lot of joy. I'll write that down. I'm not going to be realistic or judge any of these issues right now. Okay. Another rule for me is it has to be something that's only for me. Okay, these can't be those things that you lie to yourself and you tell yourself, well, this will bring me joy because it will help my kid, or it will make my, hey, I'm going to go to these basketball games and that's my social network because, well, my husband loves basketball and so I'm going for him. Okay, now whether you do this with your spouse or not, again, not the point right now. But I know that we do that. Okay, we all put ourselves last and then we tell ourselves, this brings me joy because it makes me happy because my kid is happy. So I'm going to run the scouting troop for 2 years, okay? Because that's going to make my kid happy and that will make make me happy. Not what I'm looking for right now. I'm literally looking for things that you can do for yourself that no one else benefits from, okay? So even if you love to cook, that's not necessarily what I'm looking for right now because you're going to be cooking to support, to feed your family, and therefore that brings you, it's literally what brings you personally joy that really you can say no one else benefits from, okay? Because this is not about our kids and our spouse and our family and all of that. It's just about us right now, okay? It can absolutely be work-related. Okay, it could be an event that's work related. It could be career related. You can take a class online. You can read a book specifically about like learn a new skill. I've been learning how to podcast and how to do Teachable and how to ConvertKit. This is stuff for me. This isn't from anybody else. I wanted to learn it. I did. It could be, so it absolutely could be a networking event. It could be a work-related networking event. If you get something out of it and you really get pumped up, there is a networking event that I did in DC. And I'll tell you honestly, it really didn't build me more business. I went with that kind of original plan, but I was like, this isn't really the right crowd, but I love this crowd. I walk out of this event every single time so revved and so pumped. And I'm always thinking, how can I apply what I learned in this random crowd to my own business and bring that in? And like, what am I learning from these people that apply to me? So it can be absolutely something like that. It doesn't, I own my own business. So yes, when I go to networking events for work, it's usually to try to get my name out there, to build clientele and to build my network, to eventually get me more clientele and so on and so on. Yes. This didn't end up being that crowd, but I didn't care because I got so pumped and I met so many people outside my normal little circle that it kind of started to spread my thought patterns in random ways. So I love that. And that was one of the things I did for me. And it was one event. They did it every other month. I started to help out with it every other month. So you guys, you see that's like one evening every 2 months is not that big a deal. And the only cost it cost me was for my parking. So, and frankly, if I was smart, I could figure out how to get cheaper parking if I planned enough in advance. So it was not that big a deal, guys. It could be a hobby. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I've always done, again, that sparked joy for me is this week, I took a cooking course, and I did this last month as well. Someone here is doing cooking classes, and I learned how to make gluten-free Chinese dumplings, and they were fantastic. And guys, I've been gluten-free for 7 years now, and I have not had decent Chinese food, in 7+ years. It was magical. They were so good, and it was authentic, and it was good. And I loved it. And I'm absolutely going to do it on my own again. It's a lot of work, but I'm absolutely going to do it on my own because I loved it. Does my family benefit from that? No, they can go to the Chinese places surrounding us and eat cheap. I can't, but it was wonderful. I did that for me. This month, just earlier this week, I took another cooking course in what's called Paracanin. I'm saying that wrong, Paracanin. It's native Singaporean cooking cuisine. And we made a full meal. Again, I was not very good at it, but I loved it anyway. I don't care. It was fun. And I'm meeting really random people, but it was really, really fun. So it could be like a random class that you take. I will tell you, as a hobby, I have always scrapbooked for a bazillion years now. And I love it. I love it. That's just my thing. It is what fills my bucket. And again, my family does okay. Maybe they get something out of it because they can look at the scrapbooks, and yes, they've all gotten baby albums, wedding albums, Christmas albums, all that. But I like to scrapbook. It just brings me joy. It fills me up. It allows me to be creative and cut and paste and glue for no one else's choice, no one else's benefit but mine. That's my thing. When several years ago, we lived in an area where there was a scrapbooking store who did like Friday night crops, and they were like $5. And literally my husband came home from work. I was in the car as he was pulling in. My kids were very small, so we frankly couldn't afford babysitters. So we literally crossed paths, and once a month on a Friday night, I saved up $5 from my grocery fund, and I went scrapbooking. And because I had such a large stash, and any of you guys who scrapbook, you know what I'm talking about, had such a large stash saved up. And I walked in and I apologized to the scrapbooking store owner. I was like, I'm sorry, I have 3 closets full of crap, and I really have to use all of that up before I can justify spending any more money. And she's like, okay, I understand. I know she was disappointed. But within 6 months, I got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm out of this. I need to go buy that. So I was really I used it up. I was using up my stash. I was cleaning out my stuff. But I was surrounded by scrapbooking friends, and I kind of started to collect random scrapbooking friends and kind of made them come with me. We would sit together at the table, and it was fun, and it was my time. And again, it really cost me $5 once a month. I could have done it more Fridays nights, but that was what I did. I also used to go to another lady's, oops, sorry, there's my timer going off. I used to go to another lady's house who was a consultant for a direct sales company that I refuse to mention because I don't want to defend anyone. And she had crops on Friday nights, an occasional retreat and things like that. And so I would go to her Friday night crops for $5 and sit there and bring my little project. And I flat out told her, it's like, I'm going to use up my stash before I touch anything else. And within a couple of months, as you guys know, I needed another tape runner. I needed this. Oh my gosh, I have to have that, and I can't live without it, and so on. But really, I pared down my stash there a ton. And I met people that without scrapbooking, I would have never met. It was going through them that I learned about the YMCA and the resources they had that I could then use for my kids. And my kids we joined the YMCA so my kids could take swim lessons in the swim team. And they told me, oh, use this swim coach, not that swim coach, and that sort of thing. So really there are, but it all came from me meeting this core group of ladies. And I'm like, best time. I meet the weirdest but most fun people in scrapbooking land. So I'm a big fan of scrapbooking. So it could be your hobby. Maybe you're like, you know what? My resolution this year was I'm going to lose weight. I've always wanted to run a 5K. I'm going to run a 5K this year. And you join a running club and you go on Meetup and it's free or whatever it is. You can do that. Again, it's something that's for you, whatever you're going to get benefit from. So look at your hobbies. Maybe the hobbies you kind of let loose, or those things you've always wanted to bring into your life that are going to spark joy. I will say, as far as the exercise course goes, I downloaded an app on my phone called Keep Yoga. It's in the Google Play Store. It was free. I love yoga. It just never seems to fit my schedule to go to an actual class. But that's a free app, and I do it in my living room while my kids are doing some of their schoolwork. It takes me 20 minutes. Maybe I do it late at night. And I'm really excited. I'm going to continue with that. So, think about the little things you can do. Cost me nothing other than 20 minutes of time and downloading an app, which was free. Even if you're just doing this one time a month, guys, just one time a month is fine. I will say that even in the past, I've joined there was a Bible study that I joined, and I kind of made my kids join certain activities on Wednesday nights that were at the same time. So I'd have the quote unquote free childcare just so I could go to the Bible study. Like I kind of finessed our schedule so they would, and kind of convinced them that they really wanted to join this little activity in Wednesday night church. So I could go join this women's Bible study. Cost me nothing, guys, but I needed that. And that group of ladies still I treasure to this day. So you can find this in a lot of different areas. Think about something that sparks you joy, that you can that really, really pumps you up, that is specifically going to fill your bucket. It's not about filling your family's or your kids' bucket. Okay, that's really important. And for us working while homeschooling parents, we have to focus on the quality of it versus the quantity. You may not have enough time, honestly, let's be honest, to do 20 things. You just might not be able to do that. You might have to pick your one or two. And maybe it's like, that women's brunch at your church, women's group, once a month on Saturday mornings because dad's home on Saturday morning. Or the scrapbooking once a month on a Friday night when dad's home so you don't have to deal with the daycare, child, paying a babysitter. Or it's the Wednesday night Bible study that costs nothing, and hey, they happen to have kids' activities at the same time, so the kids are going to do that and quote unquote socialize while you're socializing. That's okay too. Okay, So you want to bring stuff in that sparks you joy, that's going to fill your bucket, but is also going to get you out of the house and around other adults where you can talk adult language and really think about something that's not work and that's not homeschool. So one of the concepts they have in this article that I mentioned before is be a horseshoe, not a circle. Don't be the circle closer. Okay, don't be that person that comes into that circle and closes that circle. Always be on the end of that horseshoe. That's my recommendation. Don't just be in the horseshoe, but be one of those points on the end that's going to make sure it stays open. And look for those people who are kind of in that same situation you are and pull them up under your wing and make sure they feel included. Us that are out there kind of on the outside looking for our own horseshoes will so much appreciate that, and we'll be your friends for life, guys. And I've run into this, this closed circle versus and they're, really, really polite, but you're still always kind of on the outside of that circle. You might be close, but you're not really on the inside, versus that open horseshoe. And it's really, really hard. And I highly recommend looking for those groups that are naturally open, so they're easy. Okay, we might have to look for paths of least resistance, but we can also look for those groups that are going to kind of just fill our bucket, whether it be through a hobby or an activity or a Bible study or whatever else it might be, a book club or whatever it might be. Look for one of those things that you can do that is absolutely not an obligation, but is a bucket filler for you. So as we wrap up our episode today, I want to thank you all for listening in. There are a ton of great podcasts out there, and you chose to spend your time here with us, so thank you. Please be sure to check out the show notes for all the links that I mentioned earlier, and also the links to my site, workingwhilehomeschooling.com, and all of the great other ways that you can also reach out to me online. We do appreciate our listener supporters. If you enjoyed today's podcast, you too can support me with a small monthly donation that is going to help me continue to bring great content like you heard today. Please check out our show notes for the link. And I also appreciate your online reviews, all of you that have been subscribing to the podcast, that listen each week. And thank you especially to all of you who have been sharing this with your homeschooling friends. If you know someone that you think would be a great guest on our podcast, please let me know at julie@workingwhilehomeschooling.com. Make sure you join us in our Facebook group for a continuing conversation on today's topic and beyond. I look forward to seeing each one of you soon at our next podcast for Working While Homeschooling.